I, 32 am, got married to the love of my life, Sarah, 25, last week at the prestigious Palmer House in downtown Chicago. The wedding was meant to be perfect, and for the most part, it was. The crystal chandeliers, the meticulously arranged white roses, the string quartet playing softly in the background. Everything was exactly as we'd planned. Everything except for one detail that would ultimately lead to my brother's impending divorce. Looking back now, I'm still processing the chaos that unfolded. My phone keeps lighting up with messages from family members, all demanding I make things right. But sitting here in my home office, watching the winter snow fall outside my window in our upscale suburban neighborhood, I feel nothing but justified. Some might say I went too far. But when you understand the whole story, you'll see why I had to do what I did. I need to explain why I don't have a relationship with my brother, James, 34am. Growing up in the same house in the Chicago suburbs, we were as close as brothers could be. Sure, we had our share of fights. What siblings don't? But there was an understanding, an unspoken bond. I had his back, he had mine. At least, that's what I thought. Our parents always preached about family being everything, about loyalty and trust. Funny how James seemed to miss all those lectures about brotherhood and loyalty. Now, as an IT manager at a successful tech firm, I've built a good life for myself. I have a beautiful home, a successful career, and most importantly, a wife who loves me. But the path here wasn't easy, and the betrayal that led me to this point still burns like it happened yesterday. 6 years ago, 2019, when I was 26, I met Victoria, now 32 feds. She walked into a tech conference where I was speaking, and I was instantly captivated. She was everything I thought I wanted. Tall, articulate, with a sharp mind for business, and a presence that commanded attention. Everyone in our social circle could see how completely besotted I was. Looking back, I can't believe how blind I was to all the red flags. Victoria was the living embodiment of chaos in designer heels. While I spent my days managing IT projects and building a stable career, she thrived on drama. Every week brought a new crisis, a new conflict. I'd come home from a long day at work to find her ready to fight about something as trivial as a missed Instagram like or an unanswered text. But I was so caught up in what I thought was love that I rationalized every argument, every dramatic episode. Then came the first betrayal. 6 months into our relationship, I discovered she was having an affair with a colleague. It wasn't some carefully planned investigation. I literally stumbled upon messages while using her laptop to help her with a presentation. The evidence was right there, impossible to ignore. When I confronted her in my downtown apartment, Victoria did what she did best. She denied everything. She looked me straight in the eye, tears streaming down her face, and swore it was all a misunderstanding. But as I stood firm, showing her the messages I'd found, she finally broke down. "I made a terrible mistake," she sobbed, clutching my arm. "I'll do anything to make this right. Please, Marcus, give me another chance." Like a fool, I did. Despite everything I knew about cheaters, despite having watched countless friends go through similar scenarios, I convinced myself Victoria would be different. I wanted so desperately to believe that our story would be the exception to the rule. Later that year, for a few weeks, things seemed to stabilize. I threw myself into my work at the tech firm, trying to rebuild trust in our relationship. But there was this nagging feeling in my gut that wouldn't go away. Victoria's behavior started shifting again. Mysterious phone calls, sudden plans to work late, defensive reactions to simple questions. As an IT professional who deals with data and patterns daily, I couldn't ignore these red flags anymore. Still, I tried to rationalize it. Maybe I'm being paranoid, I told myself, sitting alone in my home office, staring at the Chicago skyline through my window. Maybe the trust issues are my problem. But the feeling kept gnawing at me until I finally confronted her one evening at her downtown apartment. "Is there something you need to tell me?" I asked, watching her reaction carefully. Victoria's response was exactly what I'd feared. She exploded, turning it all back on me. "I can't believe you're doing this again," she shouted, pacing across her expensive hardwood floors. "If you've decided you're never going to trust me, just say so. Don't waste my time pretending we're working things out." Her words felt like a perfectly crafted manipulation designed to make me doubt myself. And for a while, it worked. I backed off, telling myself I was being paranoid. But that sick feeling in my stomach wouldn't go away. 3 weeks later, the truth revealed itself in the most modern way possible, through her unlocked phone. I know checking someone's phone without permission is wrong. As someone who works in IT security, I'm usually a strong advocate for privacy. But by that point, I was desperate for the truth. What I found made my whole world collapse. The discovery. It took me a few minutes to understand what I was seeing in those messages, but when reality hit, it felt like someone had knocked the wind out of me. Victoria wasn't just cheating again. She was cheating with James, my own brother. The texts between them were explicit, detailing their meetups, their lies, their betrayal. I stood there in Victoria's living room, my hands shaking as I held her phone, reading message after message of my brother and girlfriend plotting behind my back. The timestamps showed it had been going on for months. While I was working late hours trying to secure a promotion, while I was planning weekend trips to win her trust back, they were meeting at his real estate office downtown. Every business dinner, every late meeting she'd mentioned, it had all been lies. I was still staring at the phone when Victoria walked in. Her face went from confusion to anger in seconds. "What the hell do you think you're doing?" she demanded, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "That's my private property." I just held up the phone, showing her the open chat with James. All the color drained from her face. For once, Victoria was speechless. I didn't say a word, just threw her phone against the wall hard enough to crack the screen and walked out of her high-rise apartment. I must have walked for hours through downtown Chicago, past the gleaming office buildings where I worked, past the restaurants where we'd had dates, past all the places that now felt tainted by their betrayal. Victoria called several times. I ignored her. Then James' name appeared on my screen. "I can explain," his message read. "It's not what you think." Another message followed. "Let's talk about this like adults." Adult? The irony of him asking to handle this maturely when he'd been sleeping with my girlfriend behind my back was almost laughable. I blocked his number without responding. The aftermath. Back in my apartment, I sent Victoria a brief text. "Get your things out by tomorrow." She called again, but I had already blocked her number. The next few days passed in a blur of numbness. I threw myself into work, staying late at the office, analyzing code until my eyes burned, anything to avoid thinking about the betrayal. A week later, I finally called my parents at their suburban home. My voice was steady as I told them everything, how their precious firstborn son had betrayed me in the worst possible way. There was a long silence on the other end of the line before my mother's voice cracked. "Oh, Marcus," she whispered. "How could he?" Initially, they seemed supportive. Dad was especially furious, saying he'd never expected this from James. They even confronted him about it. But James, ever the smooth-talking real estate broker, tried to spin it his way. "Victoria and I fell in love," he claimed. "We didn't mean for it to happen." I set one clear boundary with my parents. James was dead to me. I wouldn't be coming to any family gatherings where he was present. No holidays, no birthdays, nothing. They seemed to understand, at least at first. Looking back now, I should have known my mother's acceptance was too good to be true. Presence Day, late 2024. Eventually, I started therapy. Those sessions helped me realize just how toxic Victoria had been, and how this betrayal, as painful as it was, had actually saved me from a much worse fate. I focused on building my career, got that promotion I'd been working toward, and gradually started to heal. Then I met Sarah at a charity tech event. She was different from Victoria in every way: genuine, kind, drama-free. Our relationship evolved naturally, without the constant chaos I'd grown used to. For the first time in years, I felt at peace. 2 months before the wedding. I waited 2 years before telling my family about Sarah. Not because I was ashamed, quite the opposite. I wanted to protect this relationship from the toxic family dynamics I'd left behind. When I finally brought Sarah to meet my parents at their North Shore home, she already knew everything about James and the estrangement. The dinner started well enough. My mother had prepared her signature pot roast, and my father was on his best behavior. Then came the moment that should have warned me about what was to come. "Now we can finally be a real family again," my mother said, beaming across her carefully set dining table. The crystal glasses cut the light as I tensed up. "What do you mean by that?" I asked, though I already knew. Mom's smile widened as she reached across to pat my hand. "Well, now that you've moved on, and James and Victoria aren't together anymore, we can put all this ugliness behind us. Brothers should stick together, Marcus." I felt the familiar rage building in my chest, but kept my voice level. "Mom, let me be clear. The fact that I'm happy with Sarah doesn't erase what James did. This isn't about Victoria anymore. It's about my own brother betraying my trust. But family is everything." Mom's voice took on that shrill tone I remembered from childhood arguments. "You have to forgive each other. Especially now, with the baby coming." "What baby?" I interrupted, but Mom quickly changed the subject. Dad, sensing the tension, tried to intervene. "Helen, drop it. Marcus has the right to feel how he feels." But Mom wasn't done. She turned to Sarah, her eyes pleading. "Surely you understand the importance of family? Maybe you could help Marcus see reason?" Sarah, bless her, just smiled politely. "I believe Marcus is capable of making his own decisions about his relationships," she said firmly, "and I support whatever he chooses." I could see my mother's carefully maintained facade crack just a little at Sarah's response. The rest of dinner was uncomfortable, but I thought at least we'd made our position clear. How wrong I was. The wedding date, January 2025. The Palmer House ballroom was everything we'd dreamed of for our wedding. The morning had gone perfectly. Sarah was getting ready with her bridesmaids in the bridal suite, and I was adjusting my tie in another room when my best man, Rick, burst in. The look on his face made my stomach drop. "Marcus, we've got a situation," he said, still catching his breath. "Your parents. They brought James. And his wife. They're in the lobby right now." For a moment, I couldn't process what he was saying. My hands froze on my tie as I stared at him. "What do you mean, they brought James? Your mother insisted they're family and should be here." I tried to get them to leave, but Rick ran a hand through his hair. "Your mom said some stuff about me not being real family, unlike James. Said you'd want your brother here more than me." The rage I thought I'd buried years ago came rushing back. I pulled out my phone and called my father, my hands shaking with anger. "What the hell are you doing?" I demanded as soon as he picked up. "Now, Marcus, calm down." Dad's voice was maddeningly reasonable. "We couldn't let people think there was a rift between brothers. It's just for a few hours. You don't even have to talk to him. It's my wedding day." I was nearly shouting now. "You knew I didn't want him here." "Stop being so dramatic," Dad sighed. "Just put on a good face for a few hours. It's in everyone's best interest." "Everyone's best interest?" I repeated incredulously. Funny how this family image wasn't important enough for you to attend James' wedding. I didn't even know he was married. But Dad had already moved on to patronizing me about my flair for theatrics and how I needed to tone it down. The plan. Standing in that private room at the Palmer house, I felt like I was going to explode. That's when Rick came through with an idea that would change everything. "Look," he said, loosening his bow tie as he leaned against the antique dresser. "You want revenge? There's a way to do this that'll hurt more than throwing them out." The plan was vindictive, possibly cruel, but in that moment, it felt perfect. Still, I couldn't make this decision alone. This was Sarah's day too, and she deserved a say in how it played out. I found Sarah in the bridal suite, looking stunning in her wedding gown. When I told her about James and my parents' betrayal, her face darkened. Then I explained Rick's plan. "Are you sure about this?" she asked, taking my hands in hers. "It's going to cause a scene." "I know," I said. "That's why I'm asking." "It's your day too. And if you don't want, do it," she interrupted, a fierce look in her eyes. "They had no right to ambush you like this." "Just," she squeezed my hands, "make sure you wait until after the ceremony. I want at least those photos to be perfect." The ceremony. The wedding ceremony went beautifully, despite my racing thoughts. I could feel James and his heavily pregnant wife sitting in the back row at my mother's doing, no doubt. But I focused on Sarah, on our vows, on the future we were building together. It wasn't until the reception, when everyone was seated in the grand ballroom, that the real show began. Friends and family took turns making toasts, each one more heartfelt than the last. And then it was my turn. The toast. I stood up, champagne glass in hand, my heart pounding against my custom-made tuxedo. The crystal chandeliers of the Palmer House ballroom cast a warm glow over the gathered guests. In the back, I could see James shifting uncomfortably in his seat, while his wife, Emily, I'd learned was her name, looked on with innocent curiosity. "I'd like to make a toast to my brother James," I began, my voice steady and clear through the microphone. The color drained from my parents' faces immediately. My mother's hand flew to her pearl necklace, her nervous tell since we were kids. "You see, James and I have been brothers for 34 years, and even though he betrayed me in a way worse than any enemy could, I actually want to thank him today." The room fell silent. You could hear the ice clinking in the water glasses. Because if it wasn't for his actions, I might never have met Sarah. I took a deliberate sip of champagne before continuing. 6 years ago, I thought I was in love with a woman named Victoria. I was young, naive, overlooking all the red flags. But then I discovered that Victoria was cheating on me with my own brother James. The gasps were audible. Emily's face transformed from confusion to horror as she stared at her husband, who couldn't even lift his eyes from the table. My mother was quietly crying now, dabbing at her eyes with a monogrammed napkin, while my father twisted his wedding ring, his own nervous habit. So really, James did me a favor. His betrayal led me to therapy, which led me to healing, which led me to Sarah. And now, thanks to our parents secretly bringing him here today, against my explicit wishes, I finally get to thank him publicly. Emily's chair scraped against the floor as she stood up, one hand protectively over her pregnant belly. I need to apologize," she managed, her voice trembling. "Thank you for having us." She hurried out of the ballroom, leaving James sitting there alone. The aftermath. The rest of the reception was a blur of uncomfortable silences and whispered conversations. My parents and James left shortly after Emily's exit, and only then did the celebration truly begin. But the damage was done, exactly as planned. 1 week later, the texts started flooding in almost immediately after our honeymoon. My mother's messages were relentless, coming from new numbers each time we blocked her. How dare you humiliate our family like that? You've destroyed our reputation in front of everyone. Your father hasn't been able to show his face at the country club. When she couldn't reach me, she started targeting Sarah's phone and social media. You could have stopped him. This is partly your fault for encouraging him. The meeting. Then came the call from Emily. I almost didn't answer the unknown number, but something told me I should. Marcus? Her voice was hesitant. It's Emily, James' wife. I need to hear your side of the story. James told me something very different, and after the wedding. She paused. Could we meet? Sarah and I met Emily at a quiet cafe in Lincoln Park. Her pregnancy was even more obvious now, her due date clearly approaching. Her eyes were red from crying, but she carried herself with dignity. James told me you were just friends with Victoria, she said quietly, stirring her untouched tea. He said you couldn't accept their relationship because you had secret feelings for her. He said that's why you stopped speaking to him. I laid out the whole truth. The messages, the betrayal, everything. Emily listened silently, her hand resting on her belly, as if to protect her unborn child from the ugly reality of their father's actions. I wondered why your parents never talked about you, she said finally. James said it was too painful for them. Now I understand. They were covering for him. The final update. My father's call came 3 weeks after the wedding. His voice sounded tired as he delivered the news. Emily had filed for divorce. For once, he wasn't trying to defend James or manipulate me into reconciliation. James isn't handling it well, Dad said, his usual confidence absent. He might try to reach out to you. I think it's best if you keep your distance. I almost laughed at the irony. Now they wanted me to keep my distance? After forcing James into my wedding? But I just said, I've been keeping my distance for 6 years, Dad. Nothing's changed. He didn't argue this time. Sarah and I have discussed offering help to Emily when the baby comes. She shouldn't have to suffer alone because of James' actions. As for James, I hear he's devastated, claiming he truly loves Emily. The irony isn't lost on me. He's finally experiencing what it feels like to lose someone you love because of betrayal. My mother and James are still trying to reach me through various channels, but they remain blocked. Sarah and I have settled into our new home in the suburbs, focusing on our life together. Sometimes I think about how everything played out. How my parents' attempt to force a reconciliation at my wedding ended up destroying what was left of their perfect family facade. They say karma comes back around eventually. Looking out at the Chicago skyline from our balcony, Sarah's hand in mine, I can't help but agree. James broke my trust deliberately all those years ago, and now he's broken his own happiness just as thoroughly. That's just how it goes when you betray the people who trust you most.